Well, I'm not quite ready. You did your recording. You all got the insert that is our tree ordinance. So it goes in your magic book. That book that you refer to every week, I'm sure, for.
Lights out, moving.
The doorstop, you're talking about the.
What else? Forgot to do?
But.
Well, it's not bad. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because you don't wanna do it,
No, it's easy to do.
but that's, we are having that.
Yeah,
We didn't last time?
we didn't.
No.
Oh.
Is it in your minutes? Did you read your minutes?
I didn't read my minutes. I wrote.
It's not in your minutes.
I know. I didn't remember if they were talking about the town or the order, but.
I have really busy week this week.
Nice big
It's really everything. Okay. Because I'm missing something. It's 6 o'clock and I called to order the Gearhart Planning Commission on January 9th. All members are here. John is joining us virtually. Garrett is not able to be here today. Chad is here and Peter's here and Angelina is here. The first thing we have on our agenda is elections. We have 2 officers. We have a president and a vice president. Nominations are now open.
I nominate Ginny Didion as the president.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? No. All right, any discussion? No, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Great. Now we need a vice president.
I nominate Don Frank.
Nominate Don Frank.
Seconded.
Oh, there's a second from John. I'm sorry, John, you know how I am, I always forget you're there. And you're in black and white today, so it's kind of a little strange or something. Any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, their nominations are closed. All of those in favor say aye for Don to be vice president.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, those, nay? Okay, congratulations, Don. I will be gone next month and you will be in charge of the public hearing.
Thank you.
I do observe how well I do it.
I follow you moves closely, Jenny, yes. And you do a great job. You're a great mentor.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. So we have a consent agenda in front of us, the minutes that were adjusted because Angela kept typing the same thing over again. We have the financial report from December 31st, 2024. We do not have any correspondence. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda with the corrected minutes as presented?
I'll move.
Right, second?
Second?
Thank you, Jennifer. So Russ moved and Jennifer seconded. Is there some discussion? Do you have a question, Eric?
I'm wondering if it's a typo.
Okay.
In the staff report, in the second line, the local population estimate amounting to a reduction of 50,000 people. That's not.
University.
The 50,000 was for the state of Oregon.
For the state.
Yeah, so Portland State
Right,
lowered their population projection by 50,000 statewide.
okay,
So local represents Oregon.
Yeah,
okay. Then, clarification on this.
Would it be, should that be added to clarification or just leave it the way it is?
change the
Well, do you want
local
to
Oregon.
change it? Yeah. the word
I mean, we
local
could
to-
say a reduction of about 50,000 people in Oregon.
Or change the decrease in, rather than saying the local population estimate to the state population estimate?
Watch for the recent population revisions from State University have shown a 6% increase in the local population estimate. Maybe it's the word local in the state population estimate.
I was just saying, instead of local, say Oregon population.
Okay.
I think that they showed that they lowered our population projection in Gerhart by 6%. And then they lowered the states by 50,000.
All right, okay,
Okay,
So a decrease in the local population, period,
yes,
and then also a Mountain Dew reduction of 50,000 people statewide.
that sounds fine.
okay,
That's more clear.
okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, yeah, good point, Gary. So did you get that?
Mhm.
All right. So, we'll correct that for clarity. Okay, so anything else?
Yes, Jenny, I have one more thing.
Oh, yes, John.
On the finance report,
Yes.
we may have covered this before, but I racked my brains and looked at the minutes and I couldn't find anything where we did. We're running a little hot, and particularly running hot on purchase services for planning, which was running at 101% of budget, and we're only at half the year. And I'm just wondering if we are something that's we discussed previously, perhaps something that I neglected to catch last time, or we're aware of that and feel we can address it.
That's not a budget for the whole year. That's a budget for the 6 months. No,
No,
you only budgeted 30.
It's normally a full year.
But it says July through December 2024.
That's the
That
actual.
is, that's the actuals, so that is reporting through December 2024.
So then his point is that we've already spent 100% of the planning. And
That's it's almost double what we had budgeted.
right. Postage is really out of whack then. I thought it was only for 6 months, that number in budget, that's why I'm.
No, that line item will be overspent this year as it already is. I think we just sharpened our pencils a little bit too much during the budget process because we were anticipating not being as busy. And it turned out that we were. As long as we don't overspend the entire category, we're going to be fine. And by our estimates, that category will be adequate to handle all the expenses. So we'll blow that part of the budget
Right, yes.
out of the water a little bit, but with the rest of the budget items in there, we should be okay.
Okay.
And it was just, yeah, we were being a little too careful and trying to keep our budgets down, but we'll adjust that for next year, but we're gonna make it.
They're at 52% now, so, that's like half.
Yeah, I think overall we should be okay. We might run a little bit hot. But that one category is something we need to adjust for next year.
Yeah, good point.
I misinterpreted it, so. Okay, anything else? Questions have been answered, minutes have been altered a little bit. We need to have a vote, all those in favor say aye. And those opposed say nay, thank you, John. We can't change the budget, we can only be aware of what the budget is, thank you. Reports, staff, Chad, do you have anything for us today?
I have a couple of things, yes, ma'am, thank you. So save the date, public safety building community meeting number 2 is happening January 14th, next week. I've got some flyers here for you to take with you. We're going to be doing site planning. So we're asking the community to help us kind of figure out this site that we're looking at for the current location. We'll be taking boxes of portions of the building and trying to lay it out. We'll also be discussing each one of those boxes and individual portions of a building of what makes up a fire and police department. And we're going to be talking about how we're trying to keep everything very small, as small as we possibly can, and condensed and still with a little bit of growth. And try to show the community that that's the job that we are we're sent to do and are trying to do to try to avoid the Taj Mahal comments that come out when we have some of these ideas of what the building could look like. So it'll be pretty interesting. This next one's gonna be pretty important, and we're gonna need as much input from the public as we can. This is what the public asked for after we learned our lessons from the last election. We learned some things, and we're trying to get the public much more involved through this process and to give us some assistance. And the 14th will be one of those opportunities. There is a lot of misinformation on Facebook. I could just end that statement there. But I think Councillor Dana wrote up a Facebook page. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you to kind of go to talk about what is actually happening. But some of the things that have been coming up is that there has been a budget established, and this is going to cost the community $18 million. It seems to be floating around. We have no budget has been established at all. We are working through the programming of this building, seeing the size, what it's going to entail. And so we really don't have an idea of what this is going to cost. But through these 4 public meetings and the work that the architect's doing, eventually we will get there. But so far, no budget has been established. So you'll see some things online where people were talking about how much this is going to cost us per thousand. But we haven't even got there. We don't have an idea. So just be aware of that. Another issue that kept coming up is that the existing building should be just remodeled. And we have some structural engineering that's been done on that building. And just for reference, it's hollow concrete masonry unit construction. There's no rebar or concrete in any of the masonry units. So it's basically a house of cards. If we looked at shoring that building up and putting enough foundation work underneath it to stop liquefaction or lateral spread, you would probably be spending upwards into $8-7 million. And basically we'd be building a building outside with the old building on the inside. The outside building would just hold the inside building from falling apart during the shade. This was built by volunteers, so it really is a difficult building to remodel, almost impossible.
And they use sand from the beach for the cement.
So the grout is coming apart because the sand from the beach is rounded versus, cube sand that they're supposed to use. So it
What
is
year was that built?
coming apart. 1958 and 1959. They did the first 2 bays first, and then they added the second 2 bays in the water shop that was in behind. And that's another issue with this site, is that when and if we decide to tear that building down and rebuild anew, the water shop that's in behind will also have to come down. And if you've seen our pole barn that's back where we keep our tractors, the green with the rust color on it, that building needs to be replaced as well. So those are things that we need to consider when we're looking at this site. There's a possibility of us being able to rebuild the public works building, which is not critical infrastructure, so it's not quite as expensive with the fancy foundations and things. If we rebuild that section, we can maybe move the fire department into that area, then tear down and rebuild this building, and then move the fire department back in, and then put the public works into a better shop for them as well. But we don't know how that's going to turn out. That's just an idea, and we got a lot of work to do. That's why we need as much public there as possible to help us through that. The city, some people are just saying that this work that we're doing, we're just trying to go full time as a paid fire department. And I can tell you that Gearhart really doesn't desire to do that, because we've got a very strong volunteer base here with a wonderful chief and division chief that people really like working with. So we're actually quite healthy in volunteers compared to most every community around here. I think we have the most volunteers out of any fire station in the county. And we really just can't support a paid fire department. That would be incredibly expensive. To do 24 ons, 24 offs with a small crew would definitely be something that would be difficult. I'll give you an example, and I'm not beating up on anybody here, But just to give you an idea, the city of Cannon Beach has about the same amount of people, as far as residents go. People that are signed up to vote, and residents of that, about 2,000 each, yet they grow quite a bit during the summertime. They do the same amount of fire calls as the city of Gerhart does, their fire department. Their fire department is wonderful, but they are about 20 years ahead of us as far as the housing crisis goes. They have been dealing with this for a very long time and having difficulties with it. So just to let you know, our fire budget is about $1 million, just under, and that pays for 2 employees, all of the costs associated with running a fire department. Cannon Beach, because they don't have the volunteers and they have gone paid, their budget is 4.7 million. That's what it takes to go from paid to not. They're doing the same amount of fire calls as we have. They have about 12 to 13 employees. We have 2. And so we don't have a desire to go paid at this point. One day that may happen with the way that things are going and volunteerism these days. But I think for the near future and even for the medium future, we can continue doing what we're doing and save ourselves a lot of money. But the city of Gerhart does not have the budget to go paid. That's not our desire at this point. We're not asking for a regional training center. That keeps popping up on social media that we are trying to be a regional training center. I think part of that comes from an article that was done by the Seaside Signal about some grants that we got and some really high-tech mannequins that we have. And our fire department was talking about how they are providing training with these mannequins to a lot of different departments. Give you another example of how that maybe came out is that when other departments are struggling for volunteers, they get their volunteers in, but you have to train them before they can even start as a basic firefighter. So we do a basic firefighting school. None of the other departments could make it work. So Gerhart took that on, and over this last summer, we trained firefighters from Warrenton, Cannon Beach, Seaside, and Lewis and Clark here at our station because our people had the ability to do that. And so I think we were talking to some people in the community about that, and they started saying, well, you don't need a regional training center. We don't want a building that big. That's not our intention. It's not our intention. And tsunamis are not the only emergency events that we must prepare for. People are talking a lot about the tsunami and that sort of thing, but we also got to think about the storms, the 2007 storms, the fires that can happen, as you see other communities are very much dealing with right now. So that was just a few of the things that were going around Facebook that I wanted to clarify. I wanted to see if any of you had any questions about that or concerns.
So sounds like Dana made a response to that.
Mhm.
And, you know, after all that we've been through the last 4, 5, 6 years about that kind of disinformation, you feel like you're making a dent at all in combating that?
It's hard. I don't have a strong feeling right now that we are, but there's evidence to show that some of the people that were just doing things to become, to create a fog of war, I suppose,
Yeah.
are losing a little bit of their steam. I think that the community sees some difference between fact and fiction when they are looking at the situation now. And I think the community, part of the community was a little upset that some people were really running roughshod over the city. And they've begun to identify that. And so more and more people that I talk to, there's better understanding, I suppose. And we're spending money with these project managers and our FFA architects differently than we had before. So we're bringing in the professionals. At this next meeting, we're also going to have some seismic professionals that are going to come in and some engineers to talk about our current situation, both for tsunami, geotech work, and the building sort of thing. So we're doing our best. I'm not sure we're getting ahead of it all. I don't think we ever will, but I do know that the group of people that was most upset, and so we made a lot of these changes, are now kind of boycotting the meetings because they don't want to know. So that's why we're trying to get as many people here as we can. So it'd be great to see some of these faces, these familiar faces, and get people learning more about what the actual facts, the real information is, versus what they're able to make it. I'm not pointing out to anybody individually, but I think that there's just a group of people that are a little frosty about the whole thing and want to create a little bit of trouble for us.
Appreciate it.
Best way I can answer that.
Yeah, thank you.
Don,
Is the Gerhart Fire Department the only facility in the area that shares any cooperative training or anything like that?
No, that's a great question. Not at all. As a matter of fact, we work constantly together. We're always sharing training through all the other departments, and especially, you know, it's very similar to the way that we respond with mutual aid agreements. We responded to Seaside 30 different times to help them out. They participate in the training. They send us trainers. We go to Seaside for trainings as well. We go to Warrenton. It is more about a familiarization as well. It gets to learn the other fire departments, how they work, who they are, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of sharing of information. No, yeah, we're not trying to be regional, but right now we just have a very energetic group of people, and Andy and Josh, that have done a fantastic job of trying to keep that going. The other problem that we had was that we also had a bunch of new volunteers come in at once for us. I think we were training 7 or 8, which was a big group for us. So we knew we had to hold this anyway. What we did is we just opened it up to the other fire departments to assist.
How many volunteers do you think?
I think currently we're at 28 or 29.
Is that a proper number?
Yeah, that's been pretty average. In the 27 years that I've been on the fire department, we've never really exceeded 30. But we've gone up and down. We've been down in the middle teens. But we've been consistently about 30 for the last 2 years.
It's impressive.
It's a neat group of people, and they're dealing with some things over there that are very difficult. We all know how cancers and things like that are very much prevalent in firefighting. And the situation that we have over there in that building is not helping us. We're in the middle of the exhaust smoke. We don't have a place to clean up after a nasty call. We take that home. You know, just the basic stuff. I'm not talking about anything fancy. So give them every opportunity that they can to stay healthy and to learn how to do this and to want to come down. And if we can do that and we can get this building, I think we'll be in really good shape. One other thing I'd like to say.
is there any other questions for Chad about that?
Taxes were another issue that keep coming up in Gerhart. You know, I can't, you know, how are we going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for it? We're looking at general obligation bonds in November, next November, to go for this. That's the most economical way for a community to borrow money. It's general obligation bonds. It's on our full faith and credit or credit of the city of Gerhart. So I did some research and I pulled all of the tax figures for all the towns, the 240 or 241 different municipalities in Oregon. And then I calculated out what their city taxes were. That includes all their local options and their bonds and their permanent rates. So those 3 things. Schools, county taxes, and other is elsewhere. But those 3 things are the main part of the city tax. So for the city of Gerhart, our permanent rate is $1.50 per 1,000. The amount of taxes we get from all of our homes here in Gerhart to operate the city of Gerhart is just about $750,000. That's it. That's all we receive from property taxes. The rest of our monies come from fundraisers from the fire department, the individual corporations such as the gas company, the power company, and all that pay us fees to do business in Gerhart because they're using our right of ways. That's a major part of cigarette tax, state taxes that come in that we get a share of, which Peter's working on trying to increase because we've been woefully underestimated as far as how many people actually live in Gerhart, so we only get a certain share. So our total budget is about 3.7 million, somewhere in there with everything included, but the taxes that you pay is about $700,000, which doesn't even pay for the fire department. Doesn't pay for the police department on its own. Those costs and fees are up and above that. So where does the city of Gerhart's taxes compare to most others in Oregon? 81% of all other cities have higher taxes than the city of Gerhart. If you want to look at these 17 pages, we are on the 3rd to last page. as far as how much we pay. $1.98 is what you pay in taxes per 1,000. That includes our permanent rate and our GO bond. We have 2 general obligation bonds for the water treatment facility. That adds about 98 cents per 1,000. One of those bonds is going to drop off in 3 months. On 3/1/2025, your taxes will be reduced. Although we calculated it out through the year, so I'm not sure this is actually correct, but your taxes will be reduced by about 50 cents per 1,000. Then in 2031, the second bond will renew, and your taxes will be reduced by about 48 cents. So a total of 98 cents will be leaving per 1,000, so you'd be left with $1.015. Our estimates, when we were looking at the $14 million project that we just voted on, would have added $1 per 1,000 to your taxes. Okay, so if we're looking at this approximate amount, and again, I'm not saying that we know what that is, but if we're looking at that building, let's say it does cost us $15 million to do this project. I don't know, that'll add about $1 per 1,000. So in the whole grand scheme of things, you're about to drop off those 2 bonds from the water treatment facility, and then we would add that, and you'd be essentially almost where you're at right now. In the 20 percentile range of all taxing districts or excuse me, municipalities. So that's just for your information.
So you're saying in November, you'll go out to the population bid to vote on a general obligation
If
bond?
things go well and the council feels like that's the direction they want to head and they feel like that we've got enough backing to do it, yes. If we don't have enough backing, council's very worried on what can happen to the volunteer fire department.
What is he going to earmark?
Construction of the project
Construction,
of a public safety building for a place for the police and fire department.
oh, okay. That, you didn't start out with that, that's where you
Oh,
lost me.
Yeah, we want to build a public safety
I
building.
just thought you were gonna go get a loan because you said you needed more money.
No, no, I mean, when you're looking at this, and Gearhart is doing all of our city general fund business for less money, all of it. That's municipal court, planning, administration, police, fire, and public works. We're doing all of that for less than what the Cannon Beach Fire Department gets to do firefighting.
So Cannon Beach's budget for their cities, is it 56 million?
It's yeah.
Yeah, in our state. So it's literally 7 times what, and it's mainly, I think it's mainly transient lodging tax. So I had not been to Cannon Beach for a while, and then I was there. I guess it was the summer before last, and it was shocking the number of vacation rentals they have. Just as you're walking through Cannon Beach, the placards on the houses, and it was, I feel like I'm overstating it if I say 75%, but if you told me it was 75%, I would not be surprised. I mean, it was stunning to see, and all of their parking lots were full. There were people that were parked on the side of the road. And when we did some of you remember this well, when we did our short-term rental restrictions, it was because people, including myself, really believed the character of Europe was changing. I mean, I noticed a dramatic difference over a like 2 or 3 year period. And we made the law on short-term rental restrictions because we got sued twice and taken the LUBA. But ultimately, you know, that was the decision that the community made, is that they wanted to preserve the Gerhart character, and that if there is a downside to that, it's that these short-term rentals generate a ton of revenue, tax revenue, as compared to what they pay in property taxes. So that's, if you look at like the cities that are even lower than Gerhart as far as the fixed tax rate, they're all, it's like Detroit City where Detroit Lake is. I mean, they're all heavily dependent on transient lodging tax. So they don't need the, so we're unique in that we are We are a vacation destination that is strictly limited the number of large rooms as well as the number of short term.
And as you're talking to people, remind them that we get our taxes based on assessed value, not real market. So even though, you know, the average home price in Gearhart is what, about $770,000 now? Your assessed value is probably much less than that. I had an example up on Ridge Drive where the house was real market value at about 700,000, but its assessed value is 350. So if that was the case, and we added another dollar for the public safety building at 15 million, that would cost them $350 a year. People were talking around town that this is going to cost $100 to $150 a month in addition to their taxes. It's just something. Unless we build a $35 million building, which we're really
Maybe for your owners, like.
yeah, well, and there are some people that we will be paying for, I'm sure.
Well, we tried to convey that last time, but it didn't get across.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's tough out there when you're dealing with.
I think last time, I think there was just a really unique environment. In that, you know, there was a culmination of misinformation, and then the level of anger was just at a level that I mean, the number of public records requests I'm getting for records that didn't exist. And, you know, saying like, because somebody had sent me an anonymous list of people that were registered that maybe for domicile in the city of Gearhart, which created a lot of, and I don't know who sent it to me because it was anonymous, and I don't know what criteria they used to identify these people, because I don't know who came up with the list or how they came up with it. But when I saw two people that I knew their names, that I knew them, and I knew they were dentists that live in Portland, so at that point I reported it on the Secretary of State's office, and then I got just public records requests after public records requests. And again, it's like my office address is on our website, so people can go and send me envelope, and it's not like I'm gonna fingerprint it or something. I don't know, you know. But that was really hard to convey to people that like the records they thought existed didn't exist. And yeah, so I think that there was a high level of anger as well. And I would hope that kind of we're better able to, and I think a lot of people didn't know the site, didn't understand exactly where the site was. So hopefully with this kind of robust public process, we'll be able to combat some of that disinformation.
Any questions? Yes, Don.
I have two questions. Chad, what was the proposal for I believe it was the 2006 or 2005 or 2007 fire building that was put to a bond that failed?
3.7 million.
$3.7 million.
Right there. Yeah.
How much is that per 1,000 assessed?
Then it would have been fairly high because our houses weren't worth as much, right? So 3.7 million at that time, I think, was assessed at, it's still like near 75 cents per thousand or something like that. Now we have much more purchasing power because our houses are worth more and that sort of thing. But this was 3.7 million, which included a whole new city hall and fire station and police station all together. It was a 17,000 square foot building that looked like that. And that's the one that went down in 2006, 2007. Every month, let's say it's,
Looks nice.
let's say it's 15 million. I'm not saying it's 15 million.
Yeah.
But let's play for that. If it was $15 million price tag for us to do the work that we wanted to do, every month we do not do that, we lose approximately $68,000 in purchasing price. Every month, because of the way that inflation and costs are going. I don't think that's the right term, but it's what I'm using.
So, okay, do you just have those handy in the office for this kind of moment?
And that's like,
That was sharp, I like that.
yeah, but that was the plan, and that did go down for some pretty good reasons as well, according to the community. Number one, it was too big. Gearhart doesn't need anything that size. This is a small town. They didn't like the design. Some people didn't, some people loved it. The other thing that happened is it was just after the water treatment facility was bonded and went through. And that bond started in a $7 million bond. And we were appealed many different ways. Took 3 years to get through that appeal. In 3 years for that appeal, 3 things happened. The amount of arsenic that was allowed in water was cut in from 50 parts per billion to 10 parts per billion. So they had to completely redesign the facility to take out all of the arsenic in the water, whereas before we were able to leave it in there. So I think that's a good thing, right? The second thing that happened is critical infrastructure laws came in. We didn't have critical infrastructure laws back then. Then over the 3-year period of time, critical infrastructure came in and the foundations, the amount of concrete rebar and considerations for earthquake were brought in, which made it much more expensive. And the third thing was our water rights were reduced because of new rules and that sort of thing. So that all of that cost an additional $4 million. So they got a $7 million bond, 3 years in appeals, came back to the project and went, we can't do it, plus cost increases and all that. And so they had to go out for another $4 million bond. That left a lot of bad taste in people's mouths. And then we come to them, we're like, great, thank you for the additional $4 million. We'd like to do a fire station. Not into it. The taxes were too high at that point, but I think we've gotten our value out of the building we currently have.
Any more questions,
My
John?
second question was, I was listening to the city council meeting last night, and one of the things you addressed was some budgetary concerns. And then Peter, you addressed, as you just did, the short-term rental situation and its impact on the budget. I guess my question specifically is for you, Peter. Are you interested in looking into revamping the short-term rental? Or do you have any advice on revamping the short-term?
I mean, I don't, I think that our short-term rental restrictions have worked, in my opinion, really well. And that we have people who are buying houses as investments, like multiple houses in a row. There was somebody that owned 3 in a row, I think. Five. The summer that we did that, there wasn't a single residential unit for rent in the city of Earhart. And so I think that one of the, I try and just stick to the law, but like my opinion on the short-term rentals, like my personal opinion and having, come here my entire life was that what had been friends and family and the back of the Mac Club magazine turned into Airbnb and Vacasa. And so people that didn't know the owners were running their house, and that experience for their neighbors changed because these were people that were here on vacation versus someone staying at their cousin's house. And so, I remember coming for a 4th of July and there were like tents everywhere and people were saying, this is a great investment, I'm gonna buy more houses. And so a lot of what traditionally had been workforce housing was being turned into short-term rentals, which is kind of the opposite in my mind of how it should work. If someone has a $5 million house and they spend a few weeks in every year and they want to Airbnb it, okay. But when suddenly your workforce housing is becoming short-term rentals so that people can't live and work here, in my mind, that's a very different scenario. So I tend to think that it's worked pretty well. I think about 25% of the houses have returned to, they're no longer.
We started with 100, I think we're down to 62.
Yeah, so as people sell them, they lose their ability to, if we really wanted to raise revenue, we would have some sort of lottery system where people could bid and buy their way in. Selfishly, I really appreciate Gerhardt being the way it's always been, where people's kids can ride their bikes and not worry and all that. And so I have really mixed feelings about short-term rentals anyway. But I think that there are other, this is part of the reason that we're beating on Portland State is because we're trying to get our population to where it should be so we get our, in my mind, fair share of state funds. But I mean, I think that there are other ways we can look to raise revenue. I would personally be reluctant to crack open the short-term rentals again because it was so unpleasant to begin with, and also because I feel like we got the mix pretty dialed in. Yeah, it was pretty ugly. So, and again, I'm keeping track. There are new firms where they'll sell like incremental shares of a house, like they'll buy a share and then have 52. Like, yeah, so but I don't wanna we made the law on the short-term rentals, I don't wanna really make the law on this new, but we're trying to keep track of it.
We're doing some things though. We're trying to do everything we can. You saw the water rate. That was absolutely necessary because we were running in a deficit. We're gonna revisit the water rates again and make sure that we have a healthy enough reserve to be able to do the repairs and the upgrades that we want to do. The city council yesterday also talked about system development charges. Finally, we're starting to talk about that. That would be the people coming in to build the homes would be responsible for a system development fee, kind of help pay for future work that needed to be done, to kind of buy into what you've already been paying for so many years. They would be buying in and then they would want to go forward. We're also looking at doing a cost recovery system for our fire department for car accidents and rescues and things that we do with tourists and people that aren't in the community. When they go through insurance, the insurance is already paying all these other fire departments around us for the work that they've done. We're getting up on that. We just did the second reading of that with Peter's help and Andy's help. And so we're going to begin doing that kind of recovery. And there was a third thing. SDCs, charges, water rates, that was it. We've also looked at our fees and raised our fees to be appropriate, rather than coming in and being able to do a zone change for $29.95 here in the city of Gerhart. We've raised that up to something that's more reasonable for the time that we're spending. But we still want to be scrappy, and Gerhart's always been really scrappy. We've always done a great job with people like Angelina, who was our court clerk, who was our ops manager for the building code department, and who was also the planning assistant director. Today I was stalking around wetlands, trying to figure out where the wetlands are. We all do, quite a few multiple jobs, and we want to continue to be that for Gerhart, but it's getting tough with all the expenses coming up.
I mean, I hesitate to even say it, but we could annex people. The ocean frontage if you look at where you can annex, it's based on the area but the ocean front doesn't count. So for areas that are inside our urban growth boundary but outside of the city, I mean, those are areas that we could annex. Not that we would make anyone, but we could if we were so inclined. So I think if the financial situation gets, more dire, right now our, the property tax increases are 3% a year. So, and inflation is more than 3% a year. So the question is, how can we maintain current services? And then what does our population want? So we might consider doing like a public safety fee, particularly as ambulance, the ambulance situation in the county is a bit tenuous. So using like a life flight like model, we could have people, paying on an annual basis, and then perhaps our our fire department adds a ambulance, and that's a service that they might be able to provide. So there are a number of ways that we can kind of try and meet some of these needs. For a long time that we didn't really talk about it, or the tools, in part because we didn't need to, because inflation was lower than 3%, but that's no longer the case. So like anything, I think the community dialogue is really important, and Gerhart's very unique. But when I look at the fact that we're like, our budget is 1/7 of Cannon Beach's for a similarly sized city. And I think, so when people are like, well, why aren't you providing the services that City X provides? It's like, well, because they have 7 times the the revenue. And then the other thing that I've noticed, and part of what I've said to Portland State is that as the population continues aging and that people reach retirement age, then what once was a second house, like a vacation house, can become their primary residence. And that's, I mean, our fire calls have doubled since 2019. And I think that's a lot of that's because people have essentially, whether they sold their metro area house or not, their Gerhardt house has really become their primary residence. So, and again, right, our vacancy rate in 2010 was calculated at 60%, which means 60% of the houses were not people's domicile or primary residence. And then it was 50% in the 2020 census. And I think our vacancy rate is probably like closer to between 40 and 45. Portland State says it's 49%, but if we're looking at like water usage and stuff like that, it's tracking that we have a higher percentage of people living here.
Which that increase.
Eric, you had another question.
Well, just, or you can give a brief answer to this. The loss of the short-term, from standpoint of revenue, we've already lost a third of the short-term rentals that were on books. And has that hurt us from a revenue standpoint? And as more of them drop off,
Yeah.
will that also hurt us?
So our short-term rental restrictions are in the R1 and R2 neighborhoods. So things like the condos, that was always an allowed use. And our hotels, they're still generating a lot. I think that it hurts us a little bit. But as there are less options, like the rates that people that are legally doing it are able to pay increase, so that increases the revenue. So what's
The
our,
lion's share, probably about 70% come from the hotels and the condos. And so we've only seen an increase in our short-term vacation rental income for a couple of reasons. One is occupancy rates are going up in Oregon, people are traveling again. But so we keep gaining, and it seems to be making up for the loss in the short-term vacation rentals.
For the time being.
For now.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else? Great. Peter, do you have anything else to share with us?
no, I think I've already touched on the fact that I've been in regular
Use your
contact.
time for
Portland
tonight
State.
and the next meeting.
Yeah, so I'll have another update for you next month on Portland State and our population. And that's alcohol tax, gas tax, cannabis tax, cigarette tax are all based on our population as calculated by Portland State.
Angeline, you have anything? No. Okay, moving on, commissioners, do commissioners have anything to report? No, I'd like to thank Russ for being my vice president for so many years. We've been here the longest, haven't we? So, thank you very much.
The vacation rental thing was kind of one of our babies.
I know,
And we need to leave it alone.
and we need to leave it alone.
We don't need the money, we need the freedom.
Yeah. And I'm sure that'll go in the minutes that we said that.
Okay, then don't put it in.
No, okay, don't. Okay.
I just want to make sure I didn't hurt Russ's feelings or Don's feelings by nominating Don to be the vice
No,
president.
Don's gonna do a great job. I'm a little more passive and Don's very interested and active. I think that's great.
Thank you, Russ.
So
And Don will appreciate right to the next meeting.
Yeah, right.
When's our training session?
That happened last month. Okay, moving ahead, we have the goals list in front of us. Are there any questions about it or updates?
Well, I had a question.
Yes, Russ.
First, under the one in the priority column, fire station site, isn't that the site up on the hill?
How's it listed?
Fire station site UGB swap.
Yes,
So why is that on there?
As far as the fire station side of things, I don't know, it's not being considered,
Okay.
As far as the
It was
future,
being
Gerhard?
considered up till,
yeah.
it's not being considered
It's
anymore.
on there because we haven't taken it off there.
The fire station is not being considered there, but there's still conversations about whether or not Gerhard should grow.
Okay,
But we don't have, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that.
So we're required to have a 20-year buildable land inventory under state law. So that parcel that I think people refer to as cottages is realistically the only place where we'd be able to grow that isn't already developed to urban levels of density. Unless we go east, which has all sorts of issues with the soil. So that's not
But does that have anything to do with the fire, that specific language have anything to do with the cottages?
So the owners of that site were gonna donate the land for the fire station and a park. That was the deal.
I understand what it is, why is it on the list?
I think because you guys haven't taken it off.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting, we take it off.
right. It was on the list of this one because a month ago, Chad was still talking about other sites, still looking at other things.
Okay,
So this is.
well, that's fine, just leave it on, I just
No,
brought it.
but are you still working on the urban growth swap?
Well, we have right now, they're doing our housing needs analysis and buildable land inventory.
Yeah.
So depending how that comes out, we might be required to do an expansion. Under the governor's, not most recent housing bill, but from last legislative session, they kind of cleaned up the UGB swap as well as the cities that are able to have a one-time 50-acre expansion. So we don't know how the numbers are going to come back regarding our buildable lands inventory, but we might need to look at that. I mean, that's a possibility. Well, it's kind of in tandem with our water issues because we want to have water to versus buying it from Seaside or Morgan.
Okay. So, by consensus, should we scratch that off our list?
Let's do it.
Is that okay with
I mean, it feels like we accomplished it if we switch it
well,
off.
yeah, okay. Well, no, it just feels like it's no longer in the pipeline.
Do you want the entire thing out?
The fire station site, UBG swap / annexation zone change. Yes, because this is, at some point down the road, it may come back on that we will have to look at it. But it's not a goal right now.
Okay.
Because we don't have any idea what might.
Yeah.
Is that correct here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have that data and that data will kind of inform our next process. If we get the water, if we get our expanded water right, then I think that there's an interest on council.
Okay, we'll see what the council has up. Okay, thank you, Russ, for that. Anything else?
Yeah, just one or two other things on
Yes,
the whole
John.
list. What is I've never even really thought of this one before. I've looked at it probably 100 times, but what is this evaluate prohibition of commercial land? What does that even mean?
Where are you reading that?
It's
Oh, evaluate prohibition.
1.2 number 4.
Well, it's a thing where residential property cannot be turned into commercial property.
Is there some
Yes.
reason why we intend to evaluate that?
Yeah, because there's always someone going, well, why can't you do it? I did not ever create this list.
You know, I think we should, at some point, I don't know if today's the day, we've already used a lot of time, but we should reevaluate what this purpose of this list is. We never actually really do anything on this list. We don't create committees to focus on items on this list. So I think we should, at some point, not tonight, it's not important, we should reevaluate the purpose of this list.
We have in the past, and it used to be the list was I can say narrower. And there were things that we actually did, like when we did the transportation system plan, or the trees thing, or there's been some things, but yes, there has not been anything. And of course, as a planning commission, often we look for direction from the city council, and they haven't given us anything to.
Yeah, I agree. Could we put an item on next month's agenda to spend 15-20 minutes talking about this?
Sure.
Yeah.
Deal.
Don says yes.
All right.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do we have any visitors' comments today? No, we don't have any visitors on the like, okay. Moving ahead, we have no public hearings, we have no unfinished business. There was discussion earlier, this month or last month about whether to have a meeting even tonight. And I said, well, if we could use the meeting this month to kind of go over this information. So when you have a public hearing next month, the public hearing next month, we can ask questions tonight, and then the public hearing next month that may go quicker and easier for us. So, Garrett is stuck on an airplane someplace. And so we have this, we have Peter to, I don't know how you want to do it, if you want to review some things or clarify anything, or you want questions from us, how would you like to do it?
However you guys want to do it, I'll note there is one typo, it's section 3.10.5.2.3.1. Which is towards the end of it, and
Did you say that again?
it is 3.10.5.2.3.1.
Before regulatory floodway.
That's item. I think so.
Yeah, so it's in the last sentence, and it says where the placement of fill cannot, and I think it should be meet, not met, meet the above standard.
Oh, great.
So,
Here, the placement of fill cannot meet the above
Yeah.
standard, rather not, then cannot met the above standard, that is 1E in 30 pages or something.
yeah, so,
10.
kind of just to review what we're doing and why we're here. I guess there was some federal litigation. As a result of that, the cities in the state of Oregon need to demonstrate that they're doing what we can for the preservation of salmon and other fish. FEMA was supposed to have this to us in July. We got it, I think, in December. They had three options. One that we could adopt basically their maps. Two, that we could develop a program. So where it will be kind of time intensive, but where property owners could bring in kind of experts to do some work to make sure that the maps, the FEMA maps were accurate. Or the third was a moratorium on any building in the flood area, so floodplain. My legal opinion, given the governor's housing bill, was that moratorium would likely not be in compliance with state law. I don't know how we could do a moratorium when her bill added allows more building in riparian areas and upland habitat. So my recommendation and what we ended up doing was doing a hybrid. So we're gonna use FEMA's data, but we're also going to have kind of a carve out. So if somebody believes that the mapping is not accurate, then they're able to go through a process that may allow them to develop their property. That already exists. There's a program called a LOMAR, which is a letter of map revision that you can go through FEMA with the property so that they can determine if, maybe because there was in-stream work or other thing, maybe there was dredging, a variety of reasons why the floodplain and floodway maps may change. And there's also a process called a CLOMAR, which is a conditional letter of map revision. So those tools already exist, though we're kind of calling them out in this. Again, the idea for this is habitat restoration activities, and the idea is there'd be a no net fill. So if you were to add soil to a site that was mapped, then you would have to do a cut that either was as much as the fill or exceeded that, so that you're not negatively impacting the stream or body of water. So that language is in here. We don't have a lot of flexibility as far as doing this. We're being required to do it by FEMA. The carrot that they're dangling for us is that then if we have a natural disaster, we'll be able to get FEMA insurance. And the stick is that if we don't have this and there's a natural disaster, we won't get FEMA insurance, which is a pretty big stick. So I can answer questions. And again, what our goal was in doing this was to use the FEMA language that will allow us to stay in their good graces and get our insurance and funds if there's a natural disaster, but also to provide property owners with the flexibility so that if there's an undeveloped site that they want to develop, that they're able to do that through kind of that cut fill process. And then we're still trying to work with FEMA just because some of what they did, and they were on a clock because the judge had required them to kind of come up with this program, but there's some stuff relating to like river and stream banks that that could be kind of problematic, particularly because we have a dynamic situation in the Ecoxy Creek that's always changing. And so having static maps is challenging for us because the situations, it's not like the Grand Canyon where, there's the rock and there's the stream and maybe over time, right? I mean, we have a dynamic situation here. So we're trying to do that. And we added you can see what we added. The yellow highlights are the new ordinance language. So like if you look at the floodways language 3.10.5.2.4, we added that conditional approval with the CLOMAR language, and then included within that the no net loss standards. So again, this is just to make sure that if people are developing in the floodplains, that they are not doing harm to the habitat. And that, again, but giving them the flexibility so that they can do a cut, so that they can do a fill on the property.
I know there's questions here, I don't know if it's possible for someone to make up a sheet of what all the abbreviations stand for. I sit there and I go, oh, what is this? But that's my personal problem. And I don't know if it's possible to create. Because there's a lot of different abbreviations used in things here, and they talk about a V zone. I've never heard of a V zone, but
Velocity,
a velocity zone? And what is a velocity zone?
a place you don't want to be when the waves are coming in quickly.
It has nothing to do with speed.
It does, it's the speed
You
at
do-
which the water would be coming in, so there's various low areas that are open to, there might be some near Little Beach. And there's
Okay.
definitely some on the ocean shore.
Okay,
Speed
But-
maps.
I haven't seen V zones.
Yeah, that was
before.
new for me as well.
Okay, so questions, Jennifer? I know you already gave me the eye. What
Well,
do you think?
I have two, and the first one, I think if I understand it, this document combines some of the material we looked at, was it like late summer or early fall, that Garrett was responding to the request or the requirement that we update our zoning to things that were existing. And that's been added here as well as the new FEMA requirements. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is the flood and the
This is both of them.
salmon and penis requirement.
Yeah.
Okay. My second question has to do with, I know that the city council directed, and you just said they directed a hybrid approach of the model floodplain ordinance plus the floodplain habitat assessment. But Garrett's language here in the summary at the very top says that the staff is recommending replacing the current text with FEMA's model ordinance dated November 2024 with the minor edits. That doesn't say hybrid anymore. Did the model ordinance change enough that that's sufficient, or where does that stand?
I mean, that we did go with the hybrid, so it might just be that. It might be that we should add that to the summary.
Because I know when he was here last month, he said things were changing fast, and I didn't know if there had been a substantial change to the model.
No, there have been some adjustments, but it's been relatively limited. And there's been the intervention by Governor Kotek as well as by Oregon congressional delegation. It hasn't really impacted anything.
So we are still gonna go with the hybrid.
So by having the Clomar and the conditional letter of map revision and the letter of map revision language, that's providing some flexibility that that wasn't initially in the FEMA language. The original FEMA language did actually prohibited Clomar and Lomar, which I was stunned by, but that's what they did initially. There wasn't going to be the ability to do cut fill. So but we've put in the no net loss standards. So it will be that will be something that people will be able to do. So I think it would probably be easier to just revise this summary to make sure that we put in there that we're adding some flexibility for property owners.
Is that your
Yes,
question,
that's our
Jennifer?
question.
Okay, Don, did you have any questions?
I'm curious about what maybe the public hearing next month that pertains to this is it a specific case? Is it Second Street? Is it just a general?
It's
Maybe
basically
that's-
any time that we have something to change something like this. To have a public hearing, you read through the statement, you'll have all that. And then Garrett, assuming Garrett will be here, will give some kind of summary of what it is. And then people could speak for it or against it. And what you can do is recommend You don't pass it, you recommend to the city council that they adopt it, or you recommend they don't adopt it, or you put it off for another month, but that's not probably a good idea. It's just. like
Okay,
another
so the public
hearing.
hearing is just about in changing
Right,
this. Okay.
this is for the public to know what we're looking at. Because obviously, if someone owns property in, say, this floodplain area, and they're looking at developing it, they might have concerns about this. There's a lot of restrictions in here. My gosh, if you're building something, it's a lot of information, so, yeah.
Okay.
So, yes,
Yeah, I mean, if I had property in a floodplain that was undeveloped, I would be, or if I wanted to. If I wanted to add to my house, I'd be getting that application in right now, so that we fix goalpost rules, we're required to follow the laws that exist when the complete application is in, but, yeah, no, I expect that members of the community will be concerned, some will be probably very happy about this, and unfortunately, we have very little discretion in what we do. I mean, we can do some tweaks here and there and we can try and provide some clarity, but, I mean, if people want the federal insurance, we're gonna need to pass something.
And so this, the restrictiveness of this is to get the insurance. That it needs to be, this document needs to be what it is to carry on with the FEMA, application.
Right, so what they said was that if we don't make substantial progress towards getting this enacted, and initially their deadline was in December, and I'm like, we don't even have your draft language, there's no way we can meet our public notice requirements and do the hearings necessary to adopt this. So then they backed off of that and said, we need to demonstrate we're making progress, which is why I talked about this during my attorney update at every city council meeting, so we could point to the fact that we were trying to make progress. But, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty heavy-handed approach to say that if a jurisdiction doesn't adopt substantially similar language, they lose their FEMA insurance, but that's what they said.
you have some other questions there, Russ?
Well, there's to the language in here, I mean, to me, it seems that, 5 point, the 6.0, 310, 6.0, I mean, that, it seems like that's in the wettest of wet conditions, that, all that yellow stuff at the end. I mean, I'm generalizing about that 6.0 final category, I'm just suggesting it must be in the conditions that are, you know, near the creek or very susceptible to the creek. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so this is, this is their, FEMA's 2024 draft organ implementation plan. And it's, we're required to be able to demonstrate measurable actions to prevent the no net loss of the parent floodplain function, so,
Isn't it the map? Garrett,
yeah,
it's the areas outlined on the map,
Right, yeah.
yeah.
Well, the only other question had to do with the tree, the little chart at the end, where we have a ratio of trees taken out. Like for instance, the very, on the far right, the 39-inch tree or greater requires a 6 trees taken out for every one removed. Am I reading that correctly? The top blue line.
yeah,
Those relationships have to do with them. So you take down a 39-inch tree and you plant 6 young trees. I guess, is that FEMA or is that us?
I believe that it's FEMA.
That's FEMA.
Yeah.
Okay, it seems to me to be kind of illogical, and it harks to your situation, Don, where somebody planted a whole bunch of trees, the thing we did 6 months ago. You had some previous owner planted trees that supposedly were sitting there, and then they clogged themselves up. I guess what I'm wondering is whether that is whether there's a site, where there's an ability to say, hey, this site won't take 6 trees without creating in 40 years a hedge.
I mean, I think that the reality is that, you know, if someone plants 6 very small trees, the odds of all 6 of them growing versus getting eaten by a deer or elk or, I don't know.
Okay.
So I think, I mean, I don't think FEMA's gonna go from community to community, like, I mean, they have standards because they're required to have standards and
I'm not sure if the new ordinance, we could take down a 39-inch tree, you know?
Well, Russell, that brings up a good point, we just have a new ordinance, do we have to then, after this gets passed in 3 months or whatever, incorporate these new rules into that tree ordinance?
Probably.
I mean,
I think only if they're in the floodplain.
Oh,
So, I think that, you know, I'm trying to get a, related but unrelated, I'm trying to get a local wetlands inventory for one of the cities. We submitted it 3 months ago. I was on the phone with the person at the Department of State Lands that does the review. It's not going to be complete for at least 6 months. So if it's taking 9 months to get local wetland inventory where there's already been delineation that's happened, like the thought of all these property owners being able to get clow marsh and low marsh from FEMA, I just don't know how this is gonna work. But I guess we're gonna find out.
John, did you have anything?
Super minor. I'm just wondering if this is normal procedure for documents like this, but all the references to sections don't include the 3.10 portion of the section. It made it for me a little hard to figure out where we were talking about. Eventually I figured out what that was talking about, but why is it done that way? And should we have that in there? Should I show you a specific example?
Yeah, I think it's done that way because every section begins with a 3 and then with a 10.
Right, but if somebody says to me, look at section 2.0, you know, I would expect it to say, look at section 3.10.2.0. Otherwise I could be looking around for a different document completely.
Yeah, I absolutely see your point, and you know, there are a lot of references to section 6.0.
Exactly. That's where I first caught this. I'm like, wait a second, where is 6.0? I could never find it. And then I realized what this meant.
So maybe that's something that we could just fully cite. I know that's gonna take some time, but,
Well, I believe what we also, I have one more correction, by the way, speaking of 3.1.6.9. In 310.442, first line says, an applicant to whom a variance is graded should be granted.
Oh,
good catch.
And then the dating on all of these is 2024 instead of 2025. Is that incorrect?
well, so that's when FEMA published their guidance.
Oh, I got it, okay. Well, I would suggest we number the pages
I think that's a
for
really good idea.
next week's or next month's meeting.
So could we do both? Could we number the pages and also fully define each of the sections?
Yeah, that's something that could happen.
okay, thank you, Russ. John, are you done?
Yep.
Okay, Eric, do you have anything?
Yeah.
Jennifer, you said so? Emerson, you have anything?
Well, I have a comment.
Go for
I kind of suspect that the incoming administration is not a fan of FEMA or the Endangered Species Act. What happens if all this stuff goes away? And we enacted it?
I mean, this is in response to federal litigation. So, I mean, it's not that FEMA wanted to do this, it's that they were basically ordered to do it. And both the governor and our congressional delegation have asked for this to be paused and they won't. So, I mean, federal judges have a lot of. So it might not, I'm sure the new administration is not, this isn't gonna be top of the list as far as what they would want to see, but, I don't know that they're gonna be able to do anything about it.
There were still people who want flood insurance.
That's true.
Peter, did they give us a new deadline? You said it was December.
Yeah,
They just want,
they now have said spring. So, again, like, I think what we've done a really good job of is like papering the files to demonstrate that we're A, taking this seriously, and B, trying to be responsive. And in fact, if you look at the timeline that we're on as compared to other cities, we're way ahead. I mean, there are other cities that are suing allegedly,
Are we way ahead of Canada?
probably.
Always,
Always.
always. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Look forward to it next month. Are there any concerns for the commission? Anything else? Do we have any questions for Peter? We've asked him a lot of questions.
This is my favorite agenda item of all time, just questions for the land use attorney. I tell other cities about this, I'm like, Gerhart Planning Commission just has an agenda item. Keep my head on a swivel.
We think a lot of you. All right, it's 7:20. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you for attending tonight. John will be in charge.
And bon voyage, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Good night, all.
Good night, John. I know, well, that's.
Well, you're definitely gonna have to tell us all about